There have been instances where buildings and windows have shaken with the loud boom that has come from the sky, where those who experience the event step outside to be faced with UFOs performing incredible maneuvers in the sky. UFO sightings accompanied by loud boom sounds are more common than one would think. Welcome to this episode of Mysteries with a History. We will be taken on a wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. And with each episode together, we will peel away the layers to look for the truth. Let me bring in my co-host, Jimmy Church of FADETOBLACKRadio. We've missed him for the last few weeks, so I'm excited to have him back on. Jimmy, happy Thursday.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Coffee. See, that's the coffee lesson, Cristina Gomez. How you doing? I missed everybody. I'm back, and I'll be here next week too. So don't get like, oh man, no. I'll be back next week. How have you been since I've been gone?
Well, we missed you, and you're drinking coffee. I'm drinking tea over here because coffee is great, but tea hits the spot a little bit different.
No, it doesn't. Oh, it hits it different. It does. I thought you were going to say better. No. Yeah, well, do your tea. Do you, Cristina, and never change. Never change. Don't follow my lead. Don't do it.
So this topic that we're about to cover is a fascinating one, and I want to give a brief summary on this case, and then we're going to go into the nitty-gritty details because I know for a diddly darn fact, and you can bet your boots, Jimmy, that people come for the details. They want to know what's up. So on a cut, you just cut me?
I just cut you. Wait a minute. You stepped on me.
I did not.
This is where I'm going to do my entitlement. This is the spot in the show where I say, see, I've been gone for 2 weeks. You've already forgot all of our traditions, our show traditions. This is the spot in the show where I am allowed by the host, Cristina, to ask the question. Kokomo? Why Kokomo? What happened in your world that you were attracted to this fascinating case?
It was the name. It sounds like a Muppet mixed with a cup of coffee. Kokomo.
Okay, Kokomo. Okay, Kokomo is where I'm from. That's Kokomo, Indiana, Indianapolis,
is it really?
Indiana. Yeah, Kokomo is just it's a suburb. Some would say it's another city. It's not. And the expand anyway. So Kokomo, Indianapolis, Indiana, Kokomo, Indiana. But fun fact here: Kokomo is in the Caribbean, and the Beach Boys had a very huge hit song called Kokomo that was all over MTV in the early '80s. And I only knew Kokomo from where I grew up, Kokomo, Indiana. They wrote the song about the Caribbean, and then I found out the name and the origins of Kokomo, Indiana. But we're not talking about the Caribbean today. We're talking about Kokomo, Indiana.
That's right. So I'm going to share my screen here and provide a summary. Actually, let me actually show you the map. So here's the map. Here's Chicago. People kind of a gist of where Kokomo is, right? And this, yeah, it's pretty close to the water, actually. And there's a river that goes straight through it. But back to this lovely photo. In Android, thank you for that. Perfect timing. Galileo Project Twitter account says they're investigating a loud boom in Northeast U.S. from October 20th. Coincidence?
That is correct.
I think not.
That is. Let's stop here for a second on that. Thank you, Android.
Thanks, Android.
I did this on my news yesterday. The tweet started going out a few days ago, and John Greenwald did a retweet of it. I went back and checked it out, and indeed, yes, the Galileo Project and Avi Loeb are asking for any information for October 20th between 7:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. at night. If you've got any security camera, ring camera, any footage with audio, they want to hear from you. So head over to the Galileo Project. They've got the specific link where you can send in stuff. I don't know what they're looking for. I was looking and reading all of the comments from people in the area. And apparently some stuff was seen in the sky combined with a low humming sound. Now that's the comments are varied on this, but the Galileo Project is on to something. I don't know exactly what it is, Cristina, but I'm going to stay on top of this.
As you should. So getting into the summary here, on April 16th, 2008, residents of Kokomo, Indiana experienced an unusual event characterized by bright flashes in the sky followed by loud booms that caused physical vibrations in the area. The impact was significant, with reports of structural shaking, activated car alarms, and widespread concern among the community. Local authorities conducted a search in response to the incident with the hypothesis of an aircraft crash in mind, but no evidence was found to support this. Also, the military officials proposed that the noise could have been due to an aircraft breaking the sound barrier, yet they also stated that there were no records of any such activity or sonic disturbances on that particular night, leaving the cause of the event unexplained. And this is one of many reasons to why this case captures so many people's attention, is because whoever you speak to, they're going to give you a different explanation on what they think happened and or what the explanation is. And usually when we hear any kind of crazy story, unexplained story, UFO story, people come to a consensus. They're like, okay, it's either this one or this one. It's either something mundane or it's aliens, right? In this case, when we're dealing with the police, when we're dealing with the military and with people and like your average citizens and then those in between, all of them are giving different explanations on what they think it was, but none of them have any concrete evidence giving a solid explanation on actually what happened April 16th, 2008.
Now, and thank you for that. So let's back up a little bit here. I have done multiple shows on Kokomo and this incident. And Debbie Kauble, who is the subject of Bud Hopkins' book, Intruders, went to my high school. She graduated a year before me. So it would have been wild to have known Debbie back then. But the incident in the book Intruders happened in my neighborhood in Indianapolis, where she had this amazing contact experience. And again, so Debbie, who has done many shows with me, she's done a movie with me too as well. As she moved from Indianapolis, hardcore Indianapolis. You can see on the map here, I said Kokomo was a suburb. It's north of Anderson and up a ways from Indianapolis. But for those of us in Indianapolis, Anderson, Muncie, Lafayette's a little bit out, but Kokomo, Terre Haute's a little bit out. But Kokomo is just, it's in my neighborhood too as well. But she moved north and to the city, the town of Kokomo, and she was there during this incident. And to put a little more color on this, she saw things, she heard things. She did also what everybody else did, which was call 911. And there were hundreds of people that saw this and witnessed this and heard it. Now, the loud booms part of this, where I live, Cristina, in Palmdale, daily, there's a loud boom. Okay, there's enough testing and stuff that goes on around here that when it goes boom and the ground shakes and the windows rattle, something is being tested, right? Okay, there's some aircraft around here that is doing that. But in Kokomo, Indiana, now we've got a different situation. And not only is, I really doubt that there's aircraft testing going on around there, but there are strict regulations in the United States for sonic booms and breaking the sound barrier over populated areas. So would there have been aircraft testing or an aircraft over Kokomo breaking the sound barrier? I would think not. And if there was, there would have been notifications. There would have been something in the media. The Air Force would have made an announcement. None of, we need to calm the nerves of everybody. That was an aircraft that created that last night at such and such a period. That never happened. So I don't think that it was a military aircraft or an experimental aircraft breaking the sound barrier over Kokomo on that evening.
And this happened at around 10:30 p.m. There were about 140 calls to the dispatch service system back in April, right, 16th, 2008, of people reporting what they were hearing and what they were seeing. And many locals claim to have heard, felt, or seen signs of an explosion. Yet by midnight, officials from the Tipton County Sheriff's Department reported that search teams had yet to find any physical evidence of such an event. And a resident speaking to the WTHR Channel 13, a news partner of the Indianapolis Star, described a violent shaking of her home and witnessed what appeared to be a fireball. And witnesses, their descriptions varied from person to person, as we hear in a lot of UFO sightings, but with some reporting a loud explosion, others seeing bright flashes, and some feeling a shaking sensation, according to authorities. And there was a huge thundering boom that just shook the town, rattling the windows and shaking the homes, so much so, obviously, that people were calling in. And in that area, Jimmy, since you've been there and you used to live there, are they known for having earthquakes in that area?
No. That's a big no. There have been earthquakes in that area going back a couple of hundred years, and reports of this further south, Memphis, and in that area along the Mississippi River. The answer is yes, but in Indiana, no. And here's the other part about the heartland and that part of the country, the crossroads of America, if you will. Heavy farming, big, flat. There are no mountains. You have to go into southern Indiana just to see a hill. Okay, so there's no mountains. There's nothing like that. Everything is completely visible as far as the eye can see. It's farmlands, it's cornfields, it's soybeans. That's it. That's all that's out there. So you have an unobstructed view, 360 degrees, depending on where you're standing and how, of everything around you. And for like the witnesses that reported these things, and Debbie Kauble, who always keeps a video camera at the ready, that's exactly what they did. And they went out, they saw the lights, then they heard the boom, and they went down to the end of their driveway and got a really good look at everything, as did hundreds of other people that were witnesses on that evening at 10:30 at night.
And then by 11:30 p.m., the Federal Aviation Administration had not reported any aircraft missing as per the WTHR's coverage. And that's going to be very important that we're going to cover a little bit later. So for those that are watching this or listening to this, remember that, write it down because we are going to revise it. And I'm really glad, Jimmy, that you brought up that earthquakes are not prevalent there. So that's why people were calling 911 and saying, what's going on here? We need some answers, but I'm also encountering something very bizarre. If that was a location that was prevalent and that was used to having earthquakes, they wouldn't have worried. They would have been like, oh, just another regular day, nothing to report here. But for a lot of these people, and again, they received about 140 calls, those people were truly startled. And we've done a show on like skyquakes before, and that was really interesting, but this one's a little bit different because we are dealing with an incredible, immense, loud sound, but also people witnessing very strange things in the sky, these very bright lights as well. And Kokomo, with a population of approximately 46,000 people and located 50 miles north of Indianapolis in Howard County, they were just they were just filled with speculation. And authorities were puzzled by the reports of a bright flash followed by a thunderous boom near the border of Tipton and Howard counties. Because, of course, based off of that description alone, people would say, it's just lightning. That's all it is here. Nothing to look at. And there were other explanations of it being a meteor shower. But let's say that were the case, Jimmy. Let's say it really was a meteor shower. There would have been a consensus. The military would have said, yep, meteor shower. The news would have said yes. The police would have said yes. People that saw it, they could maybe shrug their shoulders and say maybe. But to this day, we still do not have answers on exactly what happened that night. And the Howard County 911 dispatch, the dispatchers, they received exactly 146 phone calls within a 15-minute time frame between 10:25 p.m. and 10:40 p.m. and about 120 more than normal for an entire night. So based off of those numbers alone, they should have received maybe 26 calls for an entire night.
Right. And Mike Lee just posts, I'm going to pop this up. Mike Lee says, what about something re-entering the atmosphere? Okay, so now let's go back to what Cristina said, where some of the excuses, right, and one of them being a meteor shower. Meteor shower exists outside of our atmosphere, right? And we see that those aren't meteors. Meteors turn into meteorites when they impact the ground. And sonic booms and things can occur when that happens. There were no meteors that turned into meteorites and impacted the ground. We would have heard about that. So you can eliminate the meteor shower idea. They were certainly, Cristina, grasping at straws. And there's another aspect to this that I want to bring in. Kokomo, you said it's 46,000 people. I'm actually surprised about that number. I didn't realize it was, a small city like that. I've been there many times, but it especially between Indiana and around Kokomo, I had said it's farmland. It is eerily quiet. All right, there's nothing going on there. And so to have something like this happen, yes, it will catch the city's attention and everybody in the farmlands around there where it is absolutely quiet. And suddenly the ground is shaking. You've got a flash of light in the sky. You've got reports of this. And of course, this what has been described as a thunderous boom that happened that night. So going back to Mike Lee's comment, something re-entering the atmosphere, that would have been a meteorite. That didn't happen. And I think we can scratch that one confidently off the list.
Well, he also says, I don't mean meteor showers, I mean a craft coming in hot. Well, let's continue on with the descriptions on what people were seeing that night, because lights are described as moving in odd patterns, zigzagging, shooting straight up, splitting apart, or hovering in just one place. And in some cases, the lights spun rapidly or rotated as they moved across the sky. And some reported seeing the glow of flames and smoke trails from the lights that have crashed down. And there were a few people also described seeing beings inside of the craft of alien entities emerging from the crash. Now, of course, we're getting a little bit more outlandish here because people in general, they like to tell stories, and that's understandable. But going back to the top half of people seeing weird lights in the sky that are going in a zigzag motion, shooting straight up, splitting apart, that's not a meteor shower. Sorry to break it to you. It's not a shooting star. It's not the Northern Lights. And it's definitely not Venus or Mercury. Okay. It's none of those things. And when you give these very mundane explanations, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, it's really insulting to those that have seen something that they classify as unexplained, and very much so for pilots that also come out and tell their stories, either using their real name or coming out anonymous, and then receiving answers of, "No, this whole time you were just chasing Venus." Like, come on, get with it, Jack. Right? But here, that's another aspect of this case that truly fascinates people, is the sound, but also how these lights were moving in the sky, and also so late at night as well.
And most, and you should, myself included, would automatically, you start to, as you investigate something like this, you're checking out, okay, so what about Air Force bases? What is around there? And do you have a map of Grissom Air Force Base?
I don't, but I can pull it up.
Yeah, pull it up. Grissom Air Force Base in Indiana is what I don't even know if it's still open and active, but Grissom was, to my memory, a huge Air Force base. I'd driven past it a couple of times, but they weren't really noted for, and I don't, remember hearing. This is where I grew up. Of planes breaking the sound barrier, there at Grissom Air Force Base. And it is in the general area, but they also would have been contacted by the media, by the police, and probably the community too as well, calling into Grissom going, what's going on in the skies around here, and are you guys involved with that? Okay, so we have it here. Okay, so there's Grissom. Where's Grissom in relation to Kokomo? I'm going to pull that up really quick. What did Grissom have to say about the incident itself?
I can tell you. So investigations into the incident or scrutinized the military activities around Kokomo, particularly at Grissom Air Force Base and the Indiana Air National Guard, and both have military operating areas known as MOAs near Kokomo, a region that frequently experiences military flyovers. So that isn't anything too crazy. But Grissom's tankers, and the Indiana Air National Guard's F-16s are common sights in the sky as well. However, the regulations governing these MOAs are strict because the use of flares and supersonic flights are typically prohibited. And according to the U.S. Air Force Regulation 53 through 34, Section 3E, supersonic flights over the land must occur above 30,000 feet. And at this altitude, a sonic boom would likely be perceived on the ground as nothing more than a distant thud. But that wasn't the case for the people that hadn't encountered something so crazy and so loud. So, given these regulations, the events that unfolded could either represent an unusual and irregular military operation or indicate that something else caused the explosion in the sky that night. And so, here we are again, ourselves included, we're in this state of confusion of, okay, well, then which one is it? What is actually going on here? And, Grissom Air Force Base is 15 miles from Kokomo, so pretty darn close, give or
Yeah,
take a little bit.
it is. It's right there. And so I just looked, and this is now my memory is now cleared up. Grissom was an Air Force base until 1994, and it was a big one. They downsized it, and now it is Grissom Air Reserve Base. It's an air reserve. But I specifically, and thank you for reminding me of this, I specifically remember discussions about faster than sound and sonic boom travel in and around the communities there, that it was strictly prohibited, and there wasn't to be any disturbance of the residents there, because it is just, it's like 10, 12, 15 miles north of Kokomo. It's right there in the neighborhood, and it's not that far from Indianapolis. So you can't have that over a major metropolitan area. So again, we can scratch that off the list, can't we?
We definitely can. And so this was something that was worrying a lot of people because witnessed potentially by thousands, the Phoenix Light stands out as one of the most well-documented occurrences of a UFO in the sky. However, the Kokomo incident is marked by a startling difference, and that is a thunderous boom, but still with possibly thousands of witnesses. And typically, UFO sightings are accompanied by silence and not sound. Maybe you might get a little of a humming noise, right? But in this case, For many, this is very unique. This is very strange, but it isn't anything that's incredibly uncommon. There have been other cases across the globe where people have encountered a thunderous boom and then seeing some strange lights in the sky as well. But also, we have 473 people watching this live, 232 likes. Can we get to 300? Hit that like button if you are enjoying the show thus far. It lets us know that you're enjoying it. And it also tells the brutal YouTube algorithm, hey, we want more content like this. So go ahead and please hit that like button if and only if you're enjoying the show. But initially, it was reported that all aircraft were grounded at the time of the incident. Remember, Jimmy, and everyone else that's listening, remember I told you to write that thing down, to remember it, because we're about to revise it? Well, here we are. We are revising it once again because the Air Force said, nope, there was nothing in the sky that day, nothing to worry about. We weren't flying anything. However, the narrative shifted the following day when the Indiana Air National Guard released a statement claiming that the explosion and the lights observed were due to an F-16 deploying flares. And this new information starkly contradicts the earlier reports from the newspaper, which had aligned with previous statements that there were no aircraft in the air that night, including the military stating just an hour after the incident, around 11:30, stating, no, we don't have anything flying right now. Then the next day, they changed their story.
Yeah, we've heard this before, haven't we?
It
Right.
does sound oddly familiar, Jimmy.
Oddly familiar. And so we have, this is where, let's go full tinfoil hat. All right, let's go full woo-woo. Here's the deal. You have multiple witnesses in a metropolitan area that live next to an Air Force base that are used to seeing tankers, bombers, fighter jets, the helicopters. They see this stuff in the sky. And then one night they see something that they'd never seen before. Lights darting around, lights that are zigzagging, lights that are joining up, lights that are separating, followed by this sonic boom. This is what in Grissom Air Force Base, Kokomo, Indianapolis, you see this stuff all the time in the sky. Not the crazy stuff, the normal stuff. And when they see something that doesn't make any sense, they're calling the police. When they hear something that they've never heard before in and around Grissom Air Force Base, they are startled and they want answers. And now the Air Force, the media is covering this case, and it was a big case. They don't have the answers, or maybe they do, and they do know that it was something extraterrestrial that witnesses have now, and you've got to quiet this down. You've got to squash this. So what do? Yeah, okay, we said it wasn't us, but actually it was. It was an F-16. It created the sonic boom, and it was dropping flares, and it was a training exercise. If that was the case, they would have said that the day before, and they did not. And it's a repetitive thing that we hear over and over again. It's a way for the government and the military, I'm going full conspiracy here, to cover their tracks when you have hundreds of witnesses seeing the same thing.
And the thing is, if people want trust and to be trusted, stick to your story. Just stick to it. Just continue going forward. But when you change it and you flip-flop it, that's when people lose that level of trust. And this is something that the military has done time and time again, Roswell being the best example, this being yet another one. But one pattern that seems to continue, Jimmy, is with a lot of UFO sightings, there's a military base nearby. And people might roll their eyes and say, oh, come on, Cristina, we know this. That's so obvious. And yes, it is. But for those that are just joining the field, just getting into the topic, they say, oh, I didn't realize that. That's crazy. And then we have to ask ourselves, while that little piece of evidence might be obvious to many, the big question is why? Why is that their connection? Why is there that connection there? Because not all military bases, installations, Air Force bases, they don't all have nukes. They don't all have nuclear weapons. So what would be another reason? Is there this treaty going on? Is there this form of communication? Is it showing a level of dominance as well? We don't know. We can speculate, but while one aspect might be obvious, asking the questions is where it gets a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and if you want issues and you want problems, then just lie to the public, because those witnesses. So it comes out that it was an F-16 dropping flares, and what does that do to the witnesses? Didn't look like flares. Seen flares a lot. Didn't really look. No, I'm not. No, somebody's lying, and that's where the distrust comes out. And for those that are trying to get answers and are questioning things, and they hear something like that doesn't fit what they saw, it's not one person, it's not one witness. We're talking about a city, right? And that's the problem here. Now, I remember Debbie Kauble, who I have a huge amount of respect for. And her coming forward, she's got one of the most incredible contact experiences in our community, in the history of man, right? And for Debbie, who is very clear-headed, who is not only intelligent but honest as the day is long. And I've had the opportunity to sit with Debbie on multiple days and have dinner and lunch and breakfast and feel her out. She is just the mom next door. That's all she is. That had an incredible experience. And when she told me about what she witnessed there in Kokomo and tried to capture and was running around outside, finding out that it was everybody in that town. She knows what she saw, and it doesn't fit the narrative and the explanations that we have been giving, including, and we haven't discussed this yet, a plane crash. Now, this is also starting to stretch it out a little bit, isn't it?
It is. It is. Back to Debbie for those that want to get an understanding of what she encountered that night. It was April 16th, 2008, and she entered her office at around 10:20 p.m. and had just activated her computer when a vivid flash occurred. And this was immediately followed by an explosion that caused her entire place to shake. And this is just that alone is pretty spooky, but having resided near military operational space for 15 years, she was familiar with the sounds of sonic booms, yet the sound on that particular night was difficult from anything that she's ever heard. And when you're able to place those comparisons together, when you live next to a military installation, when you hear things all the time, like airplanes going passing by you, you're not always, but you're able to, at the very least, distinguish if it's a big airplane or a small airplane if you don't have any background on airplanes, okay? But if you've been living in a place for so long, you begin to follow the patterns, you begin to get accustomed to certain sounds. And in this case, for her to be next to a military operational space for 15 years and then encountered this sonic type boom in 2008, and she couldn't compare it to anything in her memory box, I feel like that is significant enough, at the very least, to be a conversational piece to say, well, that's weird.
Yeah, and you can go back, everybody. I don't plug myself, but if you go back to Fade to Black and search Debbie Kauble, she's been on the show a few times, and we have talked about, I think, the Kokomo incident on every time that she has been on Fade to Black. But go and listen to Debbie and listen to her honesty, her delivery, her demeanor, and her character, which I think just speaks volumes for all of this. And I remember her, she described it just like you were saying right there. She was in her office, and you can see her office that she's talking about on Fade to Black, by the way. And from the windows, the whole room lit up, and that's... Again, this is next to an Air Force base, and you have to expect certain things. I'll tell you what you wouldn't expect, And for the Air Force to come out and say that it was an F-16, practice and dropping flares, why would you do that at 10:30 at night without warning the population? Now, we're going to be doing military exercises. Don't everybody freak out. It's going to be at night. Your kids are going to be asleep. So we're just giving you the heads up. That's what's going to be going on next Wednesday at about 10 p.m. What you would do, and they didn't do that. I mean, 10:30 at night. Let's be pretty honest here. You're not doing construction outside at 10:30 at night. You can't get permits for that, if you know what I mean. You're disturbing the peace, right? You're certainly not going to be having military exercises over a metropolitan area without warning everybody so you don't freak everybody out. I'm just saying.
Yes, because sleep is a beautiful gift given to each and every one of us. And if you have very tiny children, it is a hassle to put them to bed. And then if you hear this crazy sonic boom at 10:20 p.m., you're going to be cursing the person that did it without giving you a warning, because putting that baby back to bed is like nobody's business. It can be so difficult. But here, you would think that they would have a level of dignity or follow some sort of ethics, right? To say, okay, we're going to tell everyone that this is going to happen. But the same thing happened for the Phoenix Lights as well, where they came out and said, oh, military.
I was going to bring that up. It's too obvious, right? But I just have to. Did you say a level of dignity when it comes to the military, right?
Yes.
That doesn't go together. That's not like Oreos and milk. No, that's two different things. But the Phoenix Lights is a direct comparison to all of this for so many different reasons. But number one, military metropolitan area. Number two, you've got Luke Air Force Base right behind Camelback Mountain. Okay, so you've got those, Grissom Air Force Base and Kokomo. You've got those comparisons. You've got a huge amount of people calling 911, just like Phoenix, same thing in Kokomo. People know what they saw. And then we had the excuses coming out from the governor, Fife Symington, to Luke Air Force Base and everything else. And then, of course, the cover-up that started later. The lights over Phoenix were seen over a 50-mile area just in metropolitan Phoenix, all the way down to Tucson. Started in Nevada and went down across the state and headed south into Phoenix. Those are the facts. People know what they saw. And then the excuses come out, and that's when people are going to step up and say, that's not what we saw. We didn't see flares. We know what flares are. Flares don't fly across the state and head south into Tucson down to Mexico, which is what happened. And it's the same thing in Kokomo. It's the very same situation.
The patterns are just screaming out. And let's get into some explanations on what some, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, credible people were saying about what people were seeing. So one of them was Sergeant Jeremy Kelly of the Indiana State Police, suggested that the incident might be a natural phenomenon. Dun, dun, dun. We've only heard that a bajillion times, but citing a recent meteor shower activity and a similar loud noise in Logansport the previous day that was attributed to a meteor shower. And he theorized that nature might be responsible for the commotion. Thank you for that. But then you also have Janice Hart, who was the secretary to the director of the Howard County Emergency Management Agency. Put that on your name tag. And this was back in 2008, and initially suspected a factory explosion. And then the following morning, she was inundated with calls about the commotion, which included inquiries about sonic booms, meteors, and even UFOs, as she recounted it to a Tribune article dated April 18th, 2008. But her original her original theory was, it must have been a factory explosion. But then, of course, you have the explanation of a sonic boom, which was attributed to the jets accidentally breaking the sound barrier during a routine training in the Hilltop Military Operations Area using F-16s, which cover airspace in and around that area. And in all of this, like the government, they're giving these different answers, and the people, the residents of Kokomo and the surrounding areas are they still weren't convinced by those explanations. Just because you might have a credible title, it doesn't always mean that you're right, and that goes for any field, doesn't matter. But in this case, people always, okay, a great example of this is toothpaste commercials. 9 out of 10 dentists say you need to get this toothpaste, right? First of all, who are these dentists? But using the term dentist, they already have this level of trust. People are going to believe them and say, "Oh, okay, 9 out of 10. That's pretty good. That's pretty high up there, and I trust my dentist." This is a great example. It's the same kind of thing. Just because they are using their title, it doesn't mean that they're credible.
Yeah, yeah. And did they actually witness this? And if you haven't witnessed it, now you're going with second, third hand reports, and also reports from that cognitive dissonance that everybody seems to have, including myself, where you're only going to read the information from a certain demographic, a certain coworker or a media outlet, and it's going to be slanted in that direction. It's really that simple, Cristina. There's another part to this, too, as well, where law enforcement, and I understand why, they want to calm the nerves of everybody. So then they start, well, okay, it was natural. It was a grain silo. Where were the explosions? Where were the reports of the fire departments putting out and responding to anything like this? There wasn't anything there for them to point the fingers at. So it wasn't some natural gas explosion, some pipe explosion, a grain silo, which happens quite frequently, enough to say that that's a possibility. But you would have the reports in the media about that, and you would have the photographs of it, and you would have insurance claims and everything else, and the paper trail that would be attributed to something like that. We didn't have anything like that here. I think that we have to stick to the eyewitness testimony about lights chasing each other, lights separating, lights joining, lights zigzagging and flashing in the sky. That didn't look like flares. I think we have to start right there, Cristina.
Oof. Well, here's the even more crazy thing. We're talking about April 16th, 2008, but Kokomo is no stranger to weird things in the sky, because in the weeks prior, there were already an increased number of sightings being called into 911, into the dispatchers in Kokomo, because on March 20th, 2008, a witness reported seeing 3 red lights in a triangle shape hovering over the east side of the town. And then on April 9th, another reported 4 orange yellow spheres traveling northeast and then disappearing. But since the mid 1990s, over 40 UFO sightings have been reported in Howard County to Newfork, right? The National Research Organization for UFOs. And the database was made public by the Associated Press in December of 2008, which compiles sightings recorded by the National UFO Research Center, Newfork, which operates from a formal U.S. Air Force ICBM base in Eastern Washington. Now, this Newfork database includes 41 reported UFO encounters from Kokomo between 1996 and 2017, with an additional 2 reports emerging from Greentown. And the series of sightings adds more layers to the region's history, which has garnered national interest for several events. A 2008 incident involving the thing that we're talking about all day long, but also the research that has been done in that area between 1952 and 1969 with Project Blue Book as well, because there have been mentions by residents during that time frame of mysterious hums that some locals claim had caused health issues in that area. And that's really interesting as well. But this location It's no stranger to things like this.
All of the nights when I'm a teenager hanging out in the cornfields of Indiana with my friends, I never saw anything. And we're talking about beautiful starlit nights, right? It's so much fun, and that's what else do you do in Indiana on a Friday night? When you're 17 years old, you're out doing things. I never saw anything strange.
Yeah, you
Not
eat
that
raw
I know.
corn and tip cows.
Well, okay, now that was wrong. That was wrong. Are you stereotyping me? I never tipped over a cow. Me and my friends. We have, not to my memory, sat around and go, you know what? Tonight, let's go cow tipping. Okay, so that's you're stereotyping me. But no, never did. We never saw anything strange. The only strange story that I have that I remember in Indiana was... it was in a cornfield. It was just south of Kokomo by probably 40 miles. And we were out in the middle of a cornfield, and this guy comes out of this fog and walks up to our car. I was driving. I was behind the steering wheel, and comes out, and he was dressed in black. I'm not making this up. He's dressed in black, and he comes right up to the window, and everybody in the car is screaming, "Ah! What's going on?" Ah! I think I was too, actually. I'm not going to lie. And I can't remember if he knocked on my window or asked me to, and I rolled it down about that far. And I'm looking at this guy, and he had I couldn't see his face. He was all in black. And this is what he says, Cristina. I'm not making this up. He goes, "Have you seen my dog?" And I got what? I roll up the window, and my friend sitting next to me, to my right, goes, he's screaming, "What did he say?" And I go, "Have we seen his dog?" And the guy turned around and walked back into the fog, into the cornfield.
What?
And disappeared. Yeah. Now, I've had people that were in the car on Fade to Black to tell this story, and it's changed a little bit. We were talking about it when we were back in Indianapolis. Not to dwell on this, we're talking about Kokomo, but we had all of us together that were in the car, and everybody says we were all inside of the car except for one, who said that we were outside of the car when he walked up. No, that's not what I remember. But we all remember the same thing. So the next day, him walking out of the fog, the next day, I went back to that cornfield and looked around. There's nothing there. There's nothing for miles. It's cornfields. What was this dude doing in the middle of a cornfield at midnight? I have no idea, but maybe he was an alien. I don't know.
It seems like the adult version of the Black Eyed Kids.
It was, "Have you seen my dog?" I swear I could hear it. Like it was yesterday. But no, and including Debbie Kauble's contact experience, that happened in the metropolitan part of Indianapolis itself. And like I said, we went to the same high school, Warren Central High School. And to know where Debbie lives, and I looked at those streets and looked at her house specifically, we're talking about my neighborhood. And the saucer that came down and landed in her backyard, and she had beings, and she was blinded, and crazy medical issues that happened. And I lived there when it went down, and I didn't see anything.
That's crazy. It really is. Her encounter is very strange. Jimmy has had her on his show talking to Debbie. I've had her on mine. So if you are interested in understanding and taking a look at Debbie's very personal alien encounter. You can find it on both of our channels. But getting back into Kokomo here, because there were a handful of quotes that I actually have for you that were collected by New Fork. Here's one of them, and their names are not disclosed. It says, I was driving down Markland by Markland Mall in 31, and I noticed a shining circular disc in the sky, pulled over to make sure, and that's exactly what I did. And it started spinning faster, and two other discs came out and formed a triangular shape while continuing to spin. That's
Now,
crazy.
what's the date on that one?
This one in particular is actually in 2014, not even in 2008, but it's in the same area. And then there's another one that says they dispersed millions of balls, like things that were seen glowing. Then discs flew off very quickly, and then the glowing balls vanished. I'm still very shocked. And that one was in 2008. And then there was these next ones are also from 2008, and it says 10 or more red orangish lights were moving around, then would vanish and reappear brighter and form a triangle. Some moved in a zigzag motion and would dart from left to right and then stay motionless. Another one says, half an hour into witnessing this, and all disappeared into thin air after shooting upward as a bright white light. 10 minutes later, reappearing in the same spots as they have been. And here in this case, there were a total of 8 reports given to New Fork on this, many of them with quotes as well. And I just read you a few of them, but one of them was from, 2014, which is absolutely fascinating. Right now, we have 565 people watching this live, 390 likes. If you're enjoying the show, hit that like button. Let's get to 400. But Jimmy, you brought up a really interesting point. The very first quote that I read, you said, what year was that? How did you know? Before I even got there.
See, I keep going back to my point, although I have never seen, to my memory, anything in the skies over Indiana. And having lived so long in that area, I can tell you. All right, now I forgot to bring up, and I'm going to do it now. We're going to wrap this here in a few minutes. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All right. So that movie starts, the core of it starts in Muncie, Indiana. Go back to your Kokomo map. Let's pull this up. And what do Cristina?
I am doing the pulling ups.
Yeah, you doing the pull? Are you doing pull-ups? You doing pull-ups?
Oh, dude, I can do a solid 2. I'm pretty built up here.
Okay. There's Muncie. That's Muncie, Indiana. See it right there? Okay. See where Kokomo is? Now, I bring this up because one of the things that Spielberg did in Close Encounters of the Third Kind is what I am trying to describe to you, to show you the heartland of America, the flatness of it all, the cornfields, the farming, and what this area is about, and what is going on in the sky, because all you see is stars. It's beautiful. There's no light pollution. And that's what happens in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which, let's shift this over. This is what went down in Kokomo. So when you hear these reports, that's why I asked you about the dates. When you hear about these reports, people are seeing things. You have the ability to go out to this beautiful flat land and look at the sky. And you will see something. I never have. But that's what Steven Spielberg tried to portray in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And if we back this up, that's exactly what was going down in Kokomo. And listening to the sighting reports from you in 2008, when all of this was going down, that's the ice, that's the little cherry on top, isn't it? That's the icing on the cake. People were seeing stuff in the skies.
Icing on the cake, cherry on top, sprinkles sprinkled all around, and a side of Oreos and milk. Man, that's a feast right there.
All in one show.
Ooh, all in one bite. What you mean?
Yeah, right. And before I let you go, and Cristina, another amazing show. I missed Halloween with you and Puck. How did that go? I did see some pictures of Puck's costume.
Costumes, plural. He had several. The majority of people loved it.
What was up with the cool eyebrows?
They were eyebrows that were
so
cool.
So cool. Mischievous.
That's Puck for you.
Yeah, there you go. So I miss you. I'll see everybody next week. And go and check out Debbie Kauble's interviews with Cristina and myself. She's one of the most credible, likable, and amazing people that I've ever met. And so go and listen to the way that, how do I say this? She's been affected very deeply by her contact experiences. She's come out of the other side. She is so bright and so smart, but she's also concerned. And so go and check out her interviews with us. And also, she's in my film, The Observers. So go and check out The Observers and check out her contributions to that film. She's a fascinating and amazing individual.
Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. We missed you last week.
I'll see everybody tonight on Fade to Black. Tonight we're doing Calvin Parker. Dr. Irina Scott, and we're going to be doing Pascagoula tonight. She's written a lot of books about it. So I'll see everybody tonight on Fade to Black, and I'll see you next week right here with Cristina.
Bye, Jimmy. What another great show. All of our shows are great, but this one was extra great. Why? Because it was today's show. Jimmy always says, your next show is always the best, and your last show, don't even look at it. That's just pretty much what he says, and he's right. But if you enjoyed the show, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. We do 3 live shows right here on this channel every single week. Also, hit that notification bell right below on YouTube so you do not miss tomorrow's show, Strange Weekly News at 3 p.m. PST. And that will be live. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, review it. Review the show. Review the channel. What do you think about it? And if you want to catch a live, that YouTube link is also in the description box below. Follow me on Twitter at eyes_on-the-skies for all of my updates and news, now known as the X, but for me it'll always be Twitter. And also take a look at my Instagram at Strange Paradigms, where I share pictures and short videos. If you want to continue this conversation, bring it over to the Discord server with 2,700 other like-minded members. Share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences, and more. I know one of my amazing moderators will share that link in the live chat for you right now. If you are enjoying everything that you're seeing on the channel, consider being a Patreon supporter. All the funding goes straight to the channel, to Puck the Puck Wedgie, and to the RV Fund, where I'll be traveling the United States, hitting all the UFO and paranormal hotspots, documenting it, and taking you on the journey with me. That is it for today. I will see you tomorrow. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.